3 days, they try to signal the scouts on the Rocky Mountains. For 3 days, they send transmissions out asking for a reply. For 3 days, they wait patiently for someone to respond. Finally, as the sun begins to set on the third day, they get a response. The voice of the radio says, Griffin Base, this is Papa Charlie Yankee. We read you loud and clear. Clanner operator, Papa Charlie Yankee, this is Griffin Base. Are we speaking with your OIC, over? The voice responds, Roger, Griffin Base, this is the OIC. Operator, sir, we need you to stay on this frequency until we get our OIC connected. The voice replies, good copy, Griffin Base. Do you know how long that's going to take? Over. Operator, momentarily. The operator is getting motions that Sin is on the line. General Sin chimes in. This is General Sin calling Papa Charlie Yankee, over. Yes, sir, we read you, over. Papa Charlie Yankee, I see you got in touch with your seniors. Can you tell them that we have survivors east of the Continental Divide, over? The voice, confirmed. We will be sending a rescue party as soon as possible. Over. Sin, confused. That will not be necessary. We are quite stable over here. Papa Charlie Yankee, did you copy last, over? Roger, but I'm not sure we heard you correct, sir. Are you sure you do not require extraction, over? That is affirmative. We are quite safe here. I do ask that you rely to your seniors that I request an audience with them, over. Confirmed, Griffin Base. We will get in touch with you as soon as possible with a response, over. Excellent. We'll be waiting for your response on this frequency. Over. Roger, Griffin Base. Papa Charlie Yankee out. Sin hands over the mic to his secretary. Now the hard part starts, he says. Less than 24 hours later, a response comes through with instructions on where to land a transport. A Black Hawk is fueled and ready to go. In less than an hour, Sin is on and with a case in his hand. It only takes a few hours before they are crossing the Continental Divide. Sin can even see a few guys moving around on the ground, which kind of makes him smile. It only takes an hour after that to reach their objective. They land on a helipad with a perfect three-point landing. As the engines turn off, Sin gets out and hangs his head low as he is to clear the blades. A warrant officer runs up to him. Chief Warrant Officer says, Welcome to Trevor Air Base, sir. Sin responds, I think we can skip the pleasantries, Chief. I'm sure there are people that want to see me. The Chief replies, Yes, sir, follow me. He leads Sin to a Humvee parked just off the airfield, while the crew begin checking the aircraft for any maintenance issues. The Humvee makes a short trip and ends up in front of a large building. Sin is shown inside and waits to be called in. After 10 long minutes, a young woman steps outside and motions to Sin. They are ready for you now. Slightly annoyed at the delay as he knows it's a power move, Sin walks in and is shown to a podium in the middle of the room. 5 people sit behind a very long desk in front of him. Each of the people is dressed in either a different uniform or a press suit. Sin looks undressed in his BDUs with nothing on him except his name and rank. Looking close, he can see that the one in the middle is sitting behind a presidential seal, which makes Sin's eyes narrow. A man on the far side says, We will now begin. Sin simply leans down and pulls out papers in the case, steps forward and puts it on the table. These are the names of survivors. I'm assuming you have something similar for me? Everyone looks puzzled. He looks back and forth and says, Is that a no? The president, a new one, pops up and says, Sergeant, we are here for you to give us a complete debriefing along with the strength of your unit. Sin cocks his head slightly. Really? The president, Don't test me or I will have you arrested right now. Another general pipes in. You will answer our questions, Sergeant, and you will surrender your forces to the higher authority. Sin snaps back. First of all, I'm not a sergeant. I'm a general. Second, perhaps you would like to explain your authority to these people. He pulls out a large stack of papers and slams it down in front of the president. These are the people you left to die when you abandoned us on the other side of the divide. A female in a pressed suit says, You were never promoted to general, and keep your military bearing. This is your final warning. Sin turns to her. Since we are in your country, I will keep myself contained, but I will not take back my words. She replies, you will follow proper military doctrine here. You are here as a servant of the USA after all. Sin chuckles a little. No, that's not why I'm here. I came here to bring about a peace treaty between the U.S. government and the newly formed Confederation. The president pipes up. Are you telling us that the Confederation has risen again? Sin retorts, don't judge things from the name. The Confederate States of America is dead. The Confederation, as we call it, has been brought about by your lack of action. The second general states, are you saying that a new government is forming? Sin replies, no. I'm saying that the government has formed and it's stable. To keep it that way, I would like to have this treaty signed by both nations, bringing an end to hostilities on this continent. There's an uneasy silence and low chatter between the generals and the president. The president turns back and says, as things stand, we cannot acknowledge that such a government exists. Therefore, you are to relinquish command of all your forces and territories to us immediately. Is that clear, Staff Sergeant? That last word cut through the air like a knife. It cut deep into Sin as rage began to take over, as he knows being called by his former proper rank is a nice way of telling somebody to shut the fuck up and do what they say. Sin answered, you gave up all your rights to call me that when you sent good men and women to die, when you ran with your tail between your legs. Have you ever once picked up a weapon and fought alongside your soldiers? Have you ever worn a uniform without brass on it? Have you even seen the front line? Everyone in the room is put back at the outburst. It takes a few seconds for Sin to calm down as he takes a breath. Since you seem to have no interest in signing a treaty or forming an alliance, we seem to have nothing more to discuss. Sin picks up his bag and turns to leave. The president yells, do not walk away from us. Sin doesn't even turn as he keeps walking, saying, like you ran away from me? The first general screams, guards! 2 men step in front of Sin. The general says, you cannot leave, not until we dismiss you. Sin responds calmly, you dismissed me over the radio, or have you forgotten? The man's eyes focus on the back of Sin as he turns his head to speak. I will never leave a fallen comrade to fall in the hands of the enemy. He pauses, waiting for that to sink in. The general is confused. Ready, I display the intestinal fortitude required to fight on to the objective and complete the mission, though I be the lone survivor. As he turns around, he sees the man's face go pale. Do you remember these words? Because I remember your voice. I spoke those words to you the night you told me you were abandoning the eastern 2/3 of the United States, the whole side of this continent. You showed no intention of saving anyone. You told me to leave everyone behind and run like a bitch. I was the lone survivor of my battalion. Everyone else died in ways that are even hard to imagine. I was beyond lucky, but now I have this too. He pulls out a sack from the bottom of the case and he lobs it over the table and to the other side as it rips open, spilling dog tags across the table. You left them all to die. The president goes, it's true that people die in war, but you can't blame us for the war. Sin, then tell me this. If DC is leveled to the ground, why isn't your name in there too? Of course, the president doesn't answer, nor does he try. He just sinks in his chair. The woman pipes up. Someone has to lead troops. Screaming, Sin says, from the front! Taking a breath, he shakes his head. It looks like we are going nowhere fast. I'm going to walk out this door and get in my transport. When I leave, no other Confederate vehicles or personnel will enter your country, and I expect the same from you. The first general, you may go, but remember something. Manifest destiny. The man smiled a little bit in a cocky smirk. Sin replied, are you trying to scare me with propaganda? If you still believe that crap, like eminent domain, then you already written your own obituary. Sin turns to walk past the guards and finds his transport starting its engines as he walks out. As he gets closer, soldiers begin to encircle him. They have weapons drawn and aimed at Sin. He looks at the second general walking out to see him. He says, "I'm afraid we can't let you go. This is our country, and you are now a traitor to it." Sin having to yell over the sound of the engine. "You have two choices here. One, you can hold me and bring war to your front door. Or two, you can let me leave and you can live in peace without any interference from us. How do you want to play it?" The first general walking up. "I still take orders, and you will listen to yours." Sin replies, "Has he earned the right to give them? Besides, you don't want my soldiers pissed off. I've seen what they do when they're pissed off." The first general yells out, "We are not playing by your rules here." Sin simply says, "Have it your way." He pulls a small headset communicator from his collar and speaks a few words in Latin. "Descente Arturus." A few moments later, alarms begin to sound, and a man pulls out a radio from his pocket. The man listens as his eyes get wide, and he looks up to see 5 dots, like stars in the afternoon light. Sin yells to him, "Those are my soldiers. If they come down here and are engaged, they will easily destroy you all. If they find me and my crew dead, they will slaughter everyone on this side of the divide, out of revenge alone. I still have time to call them off. It's still your call, General." The man is sweating as he looks up and then back to Sin. From the trajectory, he can see that they are coming down right on top of him. The first general gets on his radio, and he can hear, "Yes, sir. I can get him to call them off." "No, sir. No, sir. It's in exchange for his freedom." "Sir." "Yes, sir." He turns to Sin. "All right. You call them off and you can leave." Sin puts the headset to his ear, and he just yells, just one more thing. Can you have your men lower their weapons? You're making my pilots really nervous." Sin turns, and as he walks to the transport, he talks into the radio. As he climbs into the helicopter, the guards lower their weapons, and as the helicopter takes off, the dropships power up and escape into the stratosphere. Sin is in deep thought as they fly back to the east. One of the pilot calls to him, "So, I take it the talks didn't go as planned, sir?" Sin replies, "As well as can be expected. It seems like no matter what happens, the politician still thinks they're better than everybody else." Pilot responds, "I guess if it was the same way the British back in the revolutionary times." Sin replies, "Too true, too true." It takes a few hours to land. The dropship pads are still hot from their landing, those that flew over the U.S. were when Sin got back. He is inside a building before the engines are even turned off and the blades stop moving. Word of the meeting spreads like wildfire, covered in gasoline and a strong wind. Sin even releases an audio copy of the meeting for good measure. For weeks, things begin to look normal. The North American continent is calm, while Europe and into Russia are quiet. Even their expansion in Africa finds no resistance. A plan is made to reclaim South American continent. The dropships lift off and land without any incident. A survey is made with only light vehicles and armored infantry. Everything is just too quiet. That's when they find them. The natives have returned to their roots and are living off the land. A translator who speaks the local language, Spanish or Guatemalan, that works for them, finds out that they do not want to be disturbed. They just want to be left alone. The translator addresses Sin. "Sir, no matter what group we talk to, they all want to be left alone out here. They feel they would become slaves to us if they join. Only one group wanted to help, and that's to stop a local warlord." Sin asks, "Then what did you do?" The translator said, "Well, our soldiers got to practice their guerrilla warfare techniques. So, there's no more problem." Sin slightly rolling his eyes. "All right, withdraw from the area. Give them a radio so they can call us if they need any military issues that need to be dealt with." Small pockets are found across the continent, and they are all logged in. With very little to no help from the people of South America, found a way to survive without the trouble they had before. After the survey is complete, everyone climbs back into the dropships and just leaves back to their bases. Barring any incidents, they will never have to return. Africa finds nothing but death. Clanners made an extensive sweep of the continent. After the ships were blasted out of the orbit, the clanners went on a rampage, a blood rage, as it were. Any humans that had once lived there were now rotting corpses. In some areas, entire cities were razed to the ground. There was only one exception. The people that lived off the land still remained. This is in one small region of the entire continent. Nothing of value was found anywhere within there except, well, oil. They set up a small base in operations near Nigeria with the engineers working overtime to be able to fix the damaged pipelines in an attempt to keep it from killing the local ecosystem off completely. For if it continues to do so, the whole area will be worthless. With that settled, the focus is to put on moving across Russia. It isn't long before a scout stops survivors, but when they try to get a better look, the transport is fired upon. After pulling back, Sin is notified and he leads a group on the ground to the settlement. The settlement is just within China's old borders. The area is in that part of the world that's perfect for mechs. On the way, they found that remains of millions when they tried to resist the clan's forces. Clan Ghost Bear was in charge of this area during the initial assault. Several of them are already soldiers of the Confederation, but most are still unaccounted for, and it was pretty obvious why. As they moved east, they found that Russian forces did not go easy. However, the Chinese did not hold up as well as they would have hoped. As they reached the settlement, they found no one around. With no one around, they took a good long look. The fire was still smoking, and the place is a mess. It's obvious that they were left in one hell of a hurry. The group continues for days, finding nothing. It isn't until almost a week later that they find themselves looking at the mountains of China. They find what is left of the Great Wall. However, they still don't find any people. They continue east until they finally see lights at night. 60 kilometers east of what remains of one of their ghost cities, there's a town. They leave their vehicles and simply walk in, as to not scare the locals. When they enter the town, people begin to get quiet and cut them a wide path. Sin keeps looking around for some type of authority. At the end of the day, he finally sees them. Dressed in old-style robes and carrying a long sword and a short sword, the samurai stand defiant in Sin's presence. Surprisingly, when his interpreter tries to speak Chinese to them, they look at him strange. They talk back, but it's not in Chinese. Sam, the interpreter, turns and says, "That tongue is no longer allowed." After hearing the samurai retort, Sin surprises everyone in speaking in Japanese. "Please forgive our intrusion, but we seek an audience with your leader." The interpreter puts his hands up to stop another one from drawing his sword and says, "Excuse this one, but it is not allowed to request an audience. An audience must be requested of you." Sin narrows his eyes. "If you tell them we're here, then I believe they'll want to see us." The interpreter thinks for a moment, and if he doesn't, "Then we'll leave," Sin says. The samurai walks, and Sin motions for the others to follow. One of the clanners with him turns and asks, "When did you learn the dragon's tongue?" Sin responds, "There are many interesting things on this planet, things I'm just discovering myself. Just make sure you don't insult these guys." Another clanner says, "We've worked with the dragon before. We know what to do." They walk for almost an hour through the thin trails and hut villages. Finally, they find a city that looks like it's been taken out of a history book. As they walk through, other samurai walk behind Sin's group, which makes them slightly nervous. Those in front seem to have the path cleared for them, but not out of respect. The people seem absolutely frightened of these men. They walk past the buildings that's more like shacks. Then they find shops making food. They even see a bordello, which honestly makes Sin clench his rifle. as his stomach just churns at the idea. Soon they end up in front of several large gates. The samurai stop and a small door opens at eye level. A few words are exchanged and then the small door closes and the gates begin to be opened. The first set of samurai walk in but spin around and tell Sin to wait. The gates are shut and the group is left outside. They look around but don't go far. It's several minutes before the gates end up opening again. You're allowed to enter, but only you, and you must leave your weapons here. Sin looks at him and says, I will leave my rifle, but I will not leave my sidearm. The samurai says, no weapons past me. Sin responds, do your samurai surrender your companion's sword when you enter a house? The samurai clenches the swords in his left hand, hesitantly allows Sin to walk through the palace with his sidearm, but his rifle is still left outside. Everything is shining in the sun as he walks through. There's a large open garden with running water through it. Several women are working in an open area. He passes by one and gives a nod, but when she looks up at him, she is cursed by the samurai next to him for daring to look up. Sin is led to a large house in the middle of the area. It is perched on 3 meters of stone, and at the top stands a man. When the two reach the top, the samurai gives, of course, his ceremonial bow, where Sin gives only a small one. Seeing this, the samurai reaches for his sword. With a sudden jolt, Sin pulls his sidearm and has it up against the samurai's forehead. Quietly, he states, do not attempt to draw a weapon on me. The man at the top says, he's right. This is not your house, this is mine, and he is a guest in it. The samurai relaxes and takes his hand off the sword, and then Sin puts his weapon away. He is shown inside where he almost forgets to take his boots off. They sit on opposite sides of the table as a woman pours tea. The man says, you have come to speak to me, and I'm very interested in what you have to say. Sin says, then I'll get right to it. He pulls out a map. This is where we are now. I can see on the way that you have a couple villages all the way through this area, pointing to another one. These areas here are fields that have not been touched since the initial invasion. North, obviously, Mongolia and Siberia, and of course the Formiate Russia. Now, that's where many of my soldiers are now. The man says, why would you be telling me this? Sin replies, due to the invasion, the lines that divided us must be redrawn. The man, then you should know that we already have claim over this area. Stretching out his hand well past where Sin had started putting his markers down. Sin replies, I have been to those areas personally, and you have no claim. The man became very agitated. You dare tell me what is not mine? Sin calmly replies, I'm trying to spare your people any more bloodshed. The man calms down as he looks over Sin's gear, all prim, proper, and obviously modern. Sin continues with, our first contact was right here. We will pull back 20 kilometers to this area. If we draw a line in conjunction with this river, then the line will be very clear. You may take whatever land is east of it. However, we ask that the northern region remain in our hands. Confused, the man asks, for what purpose? Sin responds, we wish to make it a training ground. We also leave you double your current land. The man stands up and walks to the door. He looks out over the city. I wish I could tell you that everything will be as you just said, but I don't have the authority. Confused, Sin says, then who does? I'll just go talk to them. The man says, that is quite impossible. Why? Sin asks. The man takes a deep breath. When the invasion first happened, we fought back with everything we had, but our equipment was far from plentiful enough. Our cities were leveled to the ground. I'm sure you saw Shanghai and Beijing, all the others. All of our advanced machines were obliterated. In the chaos that followed, the government tried to restore order, but it didn't work. They sent millions to die before they even considered the consequences. In the aftermath, when everything looked like it was falling apart, the Yakuza decided to step in. They took over from the mafia that was here before, and since then, Chinese has been beaten worse than Japan, but began to take control. Within 1 year, they were able to take control of the entire area. To do so, they brought the old system of government back to work. As he raised his hand and moved it around to emphasize what he saw around him. Sin asks, so that would mean... The man replies, yes, the highest Yakuza boss became the emperor, and we, the underbosses, have been given areas to control. I am very honored that you came to me first, let it be by chance or by choice. We have brought the old ways back, which means that we will have no contact with anyone else. He turns around and looks at Sin directly. It is a drastic measure, but a necessary one. Sin asks, so by talking to me, are you breaking the rules? The man replies, no, because I'm telling you that once you leave this place, you will not be allowed to return. I see, Sin said, and then got up. Well then, I will leave this map with you so you can let your new emperor know that we will be around. The man replies, he may take this as an act of war. Sin lowers his head a little. I know, but it's a risk I have to take for my own people. As he goes to leave, another young girl tries to open the door in front of him. He allows it, but seeing this, again, makes his internals flinch. He turns around and says one last thing. If he wishes to speak to me, then all he has to do is send a messenger to my soldiers, and I will receive it. Sin leaves through the gate without incident, and they start the long walk back. He can hear the samurai speaking. They keep insisting how Sin was disrespectful, but as they get to the courage to attack the group, the gate opens and the man steps out. The man goes to one of the other samurai and states, deliver this message as swiftly as possible. The samurai looks to see who it is for, and then, seeing the seal, he's off like a shot, and Sin just walked down the street with the rest of his men. People moved out of the way. Courtesy made his group move as well. With stomachs rumbling, they walked all the way back, and it's long past nightfall when they return. The soldiers begin telling people about what they've seen, while Sin begins to make arrangements. With the lines beginning to form, Sin sets up the base of operations in Siberia and in the rest of Old Russia. These settlements will be rather small in comparison to the others. However, Sin makes sure that they will have enough to defend themselves if need be. Now the lines have been drawn across the world. With most of Antarctica limited to training fields and a wildlife refuge, and the remainder is the Arctic, with a quick message sent to the U.S. government and the Japanese government stating that the Arctic will be considered a neutral zone. With forces spread very thin, Sin is glad to see peace and the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. About 70% of the Earth's land is now under Confederate law. Even though some of the old problems still existed, they are very, very minimal. This is stated in the report from all the members. After hearing the reports, Sin stands in front of them. Thank you all for your report. Is there any other issues that need to be discussed before we move on to new business? No one answers. Then we will move on to new business, and it is actually the reason why I called you all here. I wish to talk to the clans directly, and I need your help to do so. There is stirring among the council. You need not worry, I am not interested in fighting a war with them again. I think we can all agree once is enough. I know it is only a matter of time before they come back to this planet looking for survivors. Judging from the reports I have, your forces will not run out of supplies in 3 more weeks without our support. Garan chimes in. Then we should put everyone on high alert. Sin replies, I just said that we will avoid confrontation if all possible. Delphine, then what do you want us to do? Sin replies, we will negotiate with them. Commander Becker, in charge of the Siberian training grounds, chimes in. We clanners are not ones to make deals easily. Sin replies, yes, but we have something to offer them they've been looking for. Becker asks, and what is that, sir? Sanctuary, Sin replies. Nora, the commander of the African continent, replies, Sir, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Sin says, it's rather simple. The clans wanted this planet as a forward base from which to launch attacks against the Capellans and the Free Worlds League, even the Steiners. Even the mention of those names made the council cringe. We will allow this in exchange for protection and the planet's freedom. Everyone pondered this for well over a minute. Garand finally pipes up. It sounds like it might work, but the clans may see this as a sign of weakness. Delphine added, yes, however, judging the losses from the past decade, they may not have much of a choice. Corrigan, who is now commander in Russia, there's always a choice. However, do not forget that many clan leaders put their own pride first. Kessler, commander of Mexico, if I may interject, if we simply tell them the truth, then it will be in their best interest to listen. Delphine is correct in regard to the losses taken over the last decade. Is that not why the clans work together on this planet? The words seem to make everyone hush. There's silence in the room as everyone begins to understand. Sin responds, then it's settled, unless anyone has anything else. I will need everyone here to find the codes that will reach the different clans, have them delivered to my office by noon tomorrow, and we can start broadcasting. Is there anything else that I should know, anything that needs to be brought up to the council? There is silence. Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Everyone gets up and leaves as Sin is still looking over papers and data pads when everyone is walking away. Delphine turns around and stops short of the door. She turns and looks at Sin still working. She seems to grin a little when she walks over to him. Sir, he looks up. May I speak with you? Sin looks at her. You need not ask permission. Please, sit. She does and looks at him. He gets up a moment. Can I offer you a drink? She responds, I would like one, thank you. Sin walked over to the small refrigerator and opened it. He pulls out a pitcher of water and pours 2 glasses. He set them down on the table and sets back down. So, what did you want to talk to me about? Delphine, slightly shy, says, well, sir, it's about the new policy regarding the removal of the internal contraceptives. Sin asks, what is your issue with it? Delphine says, well, you know that we clanners are forbidden to have children. Also, we're not exactly celibates. Sin goes, I still don't see where you're going. Delphine, you see, sir, if a clan woman becomes pregnant, then the fetus is immediately terminated. I think I see where you're going, Sin says. He leans forward a bit. Do not worry so much about this. If all goes well, then the clansmen on this planet will be free to return, or stay if they choose. Delphine says, even so, would you really instate such a law? I would have to convince the council, but yes, he says. Delphine says, you did not mention this during the meeting. Sin, I did not want to give anyone too much hope. If the negotiations did not go well, then the only way to survive is to have a populace. Delphine thinks for a moment. Is that why you gave the clanners 6 months to get their implants removed? Sin quickly replies, yes, otherwise it'd be a tremendous shock to too many. Delphine replies, sometimes your logic amazes me. Sin just sits back in his chair and takes another drink. Delphine takes a small sip and sets her glass down. One more thing before I go. Sin turns his eyes straight to her. You are designing this government, and are you not worried about what will happen when you're gone? Confused, and should I be? Do you know, am I sick? Delphine, you are not worried about producing an heir? Sim is slightly amused by this comment. I have designed everything after lessons learned, and the words of people much, much wiser than me. He takes a deep breath. No, I'm not worried. I have designed this government to remain long after I'm gone. Delphine, what about your bloodline? Sin seems a little concerned at this question, especially coming from a clanner. Why are you asking such questions? He asks her. She responds and seems to be a little put back. I just wanted to know. Sin, any particular reason? Delphine is silent for several moments. You need not hide any longer, he said. I have read your thoughts through your eyes, like windows to the soul after all. Delphine moved forward a little. Sin reached out and took her hand. They both stand, and Sin pulls her close. He rubs her back and kisses her neck, and that's when he feels it. A tear touches his cheek, but it's not his. He tries not to clench the thought, then he pulls back. Sin begins to walk away. Delphine yells out, "What is wrong?" Without turning, Sin says, "I'm not so much a demon to take a woman who does not want to be had." And he walks out the doorway. As he does so, Delphine realizes that she had begun to cry. Realizes this, she runs to the door, but when she looks down the hall, Sin is already gone. Sin treads so lightly that she cannot hear his footsteps. When she goes to get her coat, another tear falls. She wipes it away and gains her composure before walking to the transport. 2 days later, things are ready for the first transmission into space. A satellite is in orbit ready to transmit, along with the 2 dropships that are going to power the transmission. They send it and wait. And they wait for seems what like an eternity before they get a response. And boy, do they.